Welcome to the Upside Journal podcast. In 2026, domestic venture capital is struggling with extended exit timelines and dry powder gridlock. Yet, a sophisticated layer of cross-border diaspora business networks is quietly unlocking predictable, countercyclical returns in AI and climate tech. Today, we're breaking down the hidden alpha traditional funds are missing.
To actually deconstruct this operational edge, we're going to hit 5 key areas today. We'll look at the 2026 VC paradox, the shift from a manager to an operator mindset, the new leadership skills stack, execution mechanics and supply chains, and then wrap up with a repeatable flywheel framework for implementation.
All right, let's dive right into part 1, the 2026 VC paradox, and honestly, the absolute limits of traditional management.
Look, we're operating in a macro environment where traditional management is just fundamentally failing. You can see the stark contrast here. The traditional manager focus on the left is all about basic alignment, right? Things like process adherence and task coordination. But modern high-stakes environments demand the 2026 operator mandate. Operators don't just oversee tasks, they assume absolute outcome ownership. They're constantly anticipating bottlenecks to drive real cross-functional velocity.
That brings us to our second point, manager versus operator, and why cognitive hybridity is absolutely necessary now.
So, to scale complex operations today, operational leadership requires what we call computational thinking. Now, this is a critical distinction to grasp, guys. We aren't just talking about blindly deploying AI models. Computational thinking is actually the algorithmic framing of a business challenge. It's what allows elite operators to decompose complex workflows, formalize their constraints, and then systematically evaluate alternatives, even under deep uncertainty.
Notice how these two cognitive paradigms actually interact across core disciplines. On one hand, strategic thinking sets your holistic vision and risk appetite. But look over at the computational column. That's what optimizes the actual mechanics through modeling and data. The catch here is that computational thinking quantifies human values poorly, which is exactly why the modern operator has to blend both of them to find true operational coherence.
And this hybrid capacity translates perfectly into our next focus, the new leadership skill stack and asymmetric talent verification. When we break down this 2026 leadership stack, we're seeing foundational competencies in rigorous systems design and predictive KPI mastery. As you move up the stack, it requires deep strategic execution. And right at the apex, it demands AI-agentic workflow orchestration. Elite operators are deploying these agentic tools with strict governance, and that's exactly how they consistently outperform reactive, legacy manager-led teams. Exactly. And true differentiation really compounds at the rare intersection of these skills. Institutional value creation is no longer about just being generally good at a given task. It's about delivering a highly specific outcome. This level of operational maturity fundamentally de-risks operational throughput, making your efficiency gains multiplicative rather than purely additive. Which leads us to a pretty provocative question for any investment committee evaluating a high-growth asset today. How exactly do these operators scale these highly complex workflows, especially when they're integrating agentic AI, without creating catastrophic bottlenecks that just destroy enterprise value?
Well, the answer to that lies in our fourth segment, the operational supply chain edge and the underlying execution mechanics.
We're observing this acutely in high-stakes environments, specifically things like climate tech supply chains. Out there, operators are scaling by implementing incredibly disciplined async rhythms and building out audit-ready data visibility. Basically, by stepping away from constant live synchronization, they can utilize predictive action to proactively identify failure points. This leads to massive cycle time reduction and completely stops the capital drain of operational rework. Crucially, though, this execution relies on unyielding accountability, which you can see captured in this regulatory baseline. Even with deep agentic workflow orchestration, fiduciary alignment is absolutely paramount. Managerial authority over capital resource commitments cannot and should not be ceded to algorithms. These operators maintain strict human-in-the-loop accountability. It ensures that AI models augment their operational leverage rather than trying to replace executive judgment and fiduciary duty. All right, that brings us to our final section, the repeatable flywheel framework and your actual implementation roadmap. This flywheel operates within a very strict clinical lifecycle. Operators systematically move from framing and feasibility straight through to design, build, and then operate. This kind of strict progression ensures that any automation or AI discovery structurally aligns with true enterprise value creation well before a single dollar of capital is ever deployed.
So the implementation roadmap follows 5 sequential phases. It always starts with auditing current state workflows to establish your baseline KPIs. From there, operators build out core systems around key leverage points, and they embed those async management rhythms we talked about. Only then do they selectively integrate AI, starting with really narrow pilots under strict governance before rigorously measuring and iterating on the data. And look, the integrity of this entire framework is validated entirely by the metrics. Elite operators focus relentlessly on tracking leading indicators, things like system uptime, exact team capacity utilization, and proxy metrics for growth. They're utilizing this telemetry to verify that their systemic interventions are actually turning strategic architecture into sustained, compounding efficiency and predictable execution.
So we'll leave you with this final diagnostic question to think about for your own assets. Are your portfolio companies merely being managed, or are they truly being operated? Capital has become highly commoditized, but the infrastructure to execute high-trust, cross-border deal flow is rare. To get ahead of these macro signals and access our premium investor network, subscribe to the Upside Journal and join our membership communities. See you in the next Daily Drop.